We are back. Welcome to Primetime Crisis. Once again, I remain Captain Logan.
I remain Eric.
And today, Eric and I are not talking about anything that we both watched together. Eric watched something on his own. I watched something recommended by Mr. David Crabtree. I also listened to something that is I listened to a radio play that somebody asked me to talk about, and there is not a great place to put that except for In Crisis, even though that's not a TV show, but it is what passed for TV before there was such a thing as TV in the 1930s, although the thing that I'm going to be talking about today is a throwback to such a thing, not actually something from that time period. Eric, would you like to begin?
Sure.
Eric is going to talk today about Steven Universe Season 2. I still have not watched more of that show or caught up, but I think most of what I saw was in that season, but I might be wrong. It's been a long time, and I don't even know how long that show's been on at this point. Is it into 4 yet? Like, how long has that show been on?
I think it's into 5.
Okay.
I might be wrong. And
I'm not sure how they even break that up, because they air, like, a big, chunk of them at once, and I don't know if that's always a season, or if it's like, we do a block, and then another block, but that's a season, I don't know.
The way it's been explained to me is they drop like a block, and like sometimes
11 minutes is weird.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, and sometimes when I've talked to people, they've talked about how they're like, well, I don't even know what really falls in the seasons because they don't release them in seasons. They release 6 episodes or sometimes just 2 episodes, and they don't release them in season formats, but they're.
And whenever it's
formats.
been a while and they put out chunks, it's always news, and someone always sends me a message and is like, "Oh, they're about to drop 20 episodes."
Yeah.
So I have no idea how the seasons are collected. So what is season 2 like, Eric?
So season 2, basically everything that they built to at the end of season 1. I complained a lot about how season 1 kind of is not for anyone.
Yeah.
Until it is. Like, I don't know how Season 1 did not get canceled. Like, I don't know who was watching Season 1 before they got to the mythology stuff. Season 2 builds on all of that, where, now we have the mythology stuff, we're building the mythology. The biggest issue I had with Season 2 is that it's... meandering's the wrong word. It's just... when I got to the end of it, I was like, oh, that's the end. That doesn't feel like an ending. And I've now seen the first couple episodes of Season 3, and there was, 2 different episodes where I was like, well, that could have been the finale of Season 2. So maybe that's just more of an issue of how it's collected. But, it feels like it's building to something, but it never gets to anything. There's no big, climactic moment where I'm like, and that's the end of the season. While I was watching it, I watched the first episode of Season 3 and didn't notice.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, I guess I'm in Season 3 now. It's still quite good. We introduced a new character early in the season, which is Peridot.
Yeah.
Who's...
Oh, I didn't realize she wasn't in the first season. Because I've only watched
she's at the very
end
of yeah, she's at the very end of season 1.
I'm going to have to be careful with spoilers then, because there's just stuff that I don't know if you've gotten to yet.
So then there's characters that... or Peridot's there, but she hasn't really dealt with any of the main characters.
Yeah.
So... there's some really fun stuff that we do. Garnet is a really fascinating character because she's a fusion.
Yeah.
And she's all and fusion's about love, and she's
so
all
you've gotten
about
to that
love.
whole thing yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Already, yeah.
So that's a big reveal at the end of season 1, is that Garnet is 2 people.
Right.
I do think that once they do
I didn't know where that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so it's revealed at the end of season 1. I do think that once we they never split until that point in season 1.
Yeah.
And then they keep splitting. And I was like, and the first episode where they do it in season 2 is really good.
I thought it was just because they were keeping it a secret. Now that it's not a secret, they can do it more.
It seems like it's just to us, the audience. It was a secret. Everyone else knows.
Oh, do they?
I don't know if Steven knows, but everyone else knows, and I don't think it's a secret. It's just that's what Garnet is.
Yeah.
But the first time that we split them is really good. Where Pearl likes fusing with Garnet and keeps engineering this situation where they have to keep fusing. And she's like, oh no, we're going to have to go fuse again. And then when Garnet finds out that she's been lying to her to fuse...
That was one of my favorite episodes.
She's so... The 2 people that make her up are so conflicted about it that she splits, and that works great.
Yeah.
But then we split her like a couple more times.
Well,
I don't know if it works as well.
I don't know. There's almost this question of like a violation of intimacy.
Yeah. Well, because the merging is a lot of sex metaphor, except for when it's not.
Yeah. But when it is, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And they keep all that as kid friendly as humanly possible. I mean, like it's really cool everything they're able to say with that without a little kid having any idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. It does that. It does
that. It wouldn't still resonate with kids because it's still
because it's also just about relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and the episode where they split is your favorite episode where they go to the motel.
It's not a hotel, Steven. It's a motel. You've heard of a hotel. Oh man, and then he gets all excited about writing the bed.
And
the coins and yeah.
And there's also he's not gonna be happy about the squares. And then he opens up the pizza box and it's square pizza and Steven's like, what is this?
And I also remember loving an episode with board games, but I can't remember.
I don't immediately remember board games.
Okay.
So that might be like early season 3.
Maybe so. I'm not sure.
Or I could just not be remembering the episode exactly because I've watched this over the past couple of months.
I'm sorry, I haven't watched this in a couple of years. So.
But no, there's some really good stuff. With all the characters moving forward, I'm finally figuring out why people like Steven's dad.
Yeah.
In the first season, I was like, he's kind of a loser. Like, why does everyone love him? And then, like, as I'm working through the series, I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. He's really pure of heart. Yeah. And, like, he's doing his best.
But he's kind of clueless.
Yeah.
And also, you see so much of Steven in him.
Yeah.
That it's impossible to like Steven without liking his dad. Because if you hate his dad, then you're like, well, he just, ruined this kid. And...
Yeah. And that's kind of what I thought at the very beginning, where I was like, so doesn't he raise his own kid? And, like, I guess it's all these questions, and because the first season is not particularly good for the first half of it. Not that any of it's bad, it's just, you don't know what's happening. So no, I really come around on Greg Universe. We get a flashback episode where we find out how him and Steven's mom met, or I think the meeting might be in the first season, but we have this great thing where, because he's in a relationship with Steven's mom, and they have like a big conversation where she is really what's the right word? Like real superior.
Yeah.
Where she doesn't view him as like an equal, and he's just kind of like a plaything to her. Like he's funny, and I like keeping him around, and like he has like this moment where like they have a whole conversation where she's like he's like, yeah, I'm a person. You can't treat me like this. And like it seems like that's kind of the beginning of their relationship, really. Like before that, they were kind of dating. Like after that point, my assumption based on the episode is that like that's where their relationship sprouts from, is that conversation where they start viewing each other as equals.
Well, yeah,
and what it means to be in a relationship as opposed to just like kind of sleeping around.
Yeah, and the difference between being different from someone versus better than them, because she's comparatively almost like a god or something.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how she views him. Before this conversation, so like that's all real good. I don't love Peridot. I think she's funny when she's funny, but I also think sometimes she's annoying.
I had the same thing. It's a real slow burn with her, and she has I don't know. From what I've seen, she's the character that changes most over the course of the show.
Interesting. Right. Season 2, once she finally like gets with the group.
Yeah, I didn't know if that had happened yet.
She's kind of Invader Zim. She reminds me a lot of Invader Zim, and I found out I'm not the only one that's done that.
Oh,
that's made that mental connection.
I've never seen that show, so I did not have
there's videos where people just loop Zim dialogue over her.
Really?
And it fits just perfectly.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, it's good. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think I'm always going to have with this show. So... my biggest issue with the show without watching it was I don't like the art style.
Yeah. You still have that.
Well, and watching season 1, like, it kind of grew on me where, like I'm used to it. Like, I don't dislike it. The biggest problem I have with this show is whenever I get something new, and, like, we're kind of building to it and we get to something new, I'm always like, oh, that's what that looks like. I'm going to have to get used to it. I'm never like, oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That looks so cool. I never have that. Every time something new is revealed aesthetically, I'm always like, okay, well, that's going to take some getting used to. That's not... okay. And that's kind of unfortunate. Like, I don't dislike the art style like I did before I was watching it, but I still don't love it. I still don't see things. I'm like, that looks amazing. I'm just like, okay, that looks like something.
I've had
I'll have to adjust to it.
Amazing with some of the monster stuff. Which some of that's just twisted and creepy.
Yes, so, some of the monster stuff is real cool, but I in like a monstery way. I mean, like,
yeah, sure.
A lot of the fusion stuff where I'm excited. I'm like, oh, I've never seen these people fuse before, and then they fused. And I'm like, oh, that's what that looks like. Okay,
have you not had any moments in that show where you're just kind of genuinely creeped out? Because I've had that a couple times and was kind of impressed with it for
no.
that place.
There's some real uncomfortable weird stuff. Did you watch the episode? Did you watch the episode where Steven goes to his not friend Onion's house because Amethyst is friends with her mom or with his mom?
Yes.
And he makes Steven watch a video of him being born?
Yes!
And it's the creepiest thing ever.
I forgot about that.
Onion is terrifying, and I don't like him. I mean, I do, because he's horrifying, but, like, I don't like him. He's weird, and I don't like him. I'm trying to think of, like, the major beats, because a lot happens in this season.
Yeah.
But also, it's weird because a lot happens and a lot moves forward, but looking at it as a season structure, it feels like I'm all in moving parts, and then I wasn't moving towards anything by the end of the season. It's just, we're moving. And then, like, 2 or 3 episodes into season 3, I'm like, well, you could have made that the last episode. Like, you could have been moving towards that.
Like, yeah, you were moving toward... But, again, it sounds like you're just complaining about where they broke it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're thinking of that show in terms of seasons.
Probably not.
You're just frustrated because you have to talk about this as a unit.
Yeah.
Which is totally understandable.
And there's some stuff that happens at the beginning of season 3, like I'm now trying to remember, the stuff that I'm now trying to remember, does that happen at the beginning of season 3 or does that happen at the end of season 2? Because it's negligible. Because like I've seen stuff where like Lapis gets introduced. Well, she was introduced at the end of season 1, but like as a character that's going to be around, and like some of that stuff's really interesting. I like it.
I remember there being a couple of really cool songs that season, but...
Yeah, there's... I can't think of any off the top of my head. Also, there's a scene that... so, season 1, my highlight is Kitty Millionaire. I think that's the funniest thing they do in all of season 1. Season 2, there was a single scene I think is the funniest thing in the entire season. Maybe the entire show up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point where Steven's really uncomfortable because... I can't remember what his girlfriend's name is now.
It's been too long since I've watched that show.
Connie.
That's right.
So Connie is learning to sword fight from Pearl.
Yes.
And
that's a great episode.
Steven's not sure how he feels about this because Pearl takes it so deadly seriously and basically like is putting in Connie's head that her life is worthless next to Steven's. Because that's how Pearl viewed her relationship with Steven's mom. Was everything I do is in service to you. Which is also how Pearl views relationships, because she was clearly in love with Steven's mom, and she doesn't view that relationship as a partnership, which is why they could never have been together, because she views herself as in service, and she's trying to train Connie to do that for Steven, right? Like, Steven is better than Connie, and therefore, all of Connie's life must be in servitude to Steven, and that's all weird and creepy. And Steven's not sure about this. He's kind of seeing this all happen, and then he goes to talk to Amethyst and Garnet, and Steven just walks in, just not really sure about what's going on. And Amethyst just looks at him and goes, "Why are you standing around looking all sad like that?" And I lost it. I just want to start saying that to people. It's so funny. Like, she's agitated that he's kind of sad. I haven't
even figuring out what the context is.
I have decided that while she does gross things that I don't particularly care for, I think Amethyst is my favorite of the gems. She's the one that makes me laugh the most consistently.
Yeah.
And I just think she's a really interesting character. So yeah, I continue to enjoy Steven Universe. It's really good. It's really well written. It's really well scored. I like it. It's good.
So I need to go back to that at some point.
Yeah?
Catch up a little bit. I actually talked to you
Apparently something happened in the past couple of weeks. They dropped a Steven bomb. I've learned that they're called Steven bombs and they drop a bunch of episodes.
Oh.
And my girlfriend watched it and she said she was shook. Like apparently it was just like this mind-blowing episode and something happened and she couldn't talk to me about it because I haven't gotten there yet. And then CJ, who's been on the show before and has been telling me to watch Steven Universe since I moved here, and I hadn't until more recently. And it's like, usually I watch some episodes and I come into work and I talk to CJ. I'm like, hey, I watched these episodes and this is what happened. And we'll talk about those episodes a little bit. And I tried to do that this time, and he goes, I can't even talk to you. Something happened, and I can't even discuss Steven Universe with you. And so, apparently something big just happened, but I won't know for a while.
You better hurry up then. Better get caught up.
Yep.
And then you're going to come on the show, and you're going to be like, okay, I was going to review this latest season of Steven Universe, but Cap hasn't seen it yet, and it's mind-blowing. I just can't even talk about it.
I asked if half of all of the characters died, and I was told worse.
And if there was any chance that they would all come back at the end. Did they leave, like, the most important characters? They were like the big setup characters alive, but then a bunch of other characters they got rid of.
And I came up with the worst thing that I think could possibly happen in this show, the most devastating thing, and I don't think it's that. Which is that Steven's mom is alive, is evil, and tells Steven he's a mistake. That's the worst thing I could think of, and I'm pretty sure as long as I set that as my high bar, I'm not going to be emotionally devastated, because it's never going to be that bad. So I'm ready for whatever.
The first thing I thought of was, like, Steven is somehow some other entity and not what we thought he was.
I also think it's possibly someone's a traitor the whole time. I also think that's on the table, but I don't know.
It's Pearl, right?
It's gotta be Pearl.
Like,
I don't like her.
Naturally.
She's my least favorite gem.
Nobody's that uptight.
I do not like Pearl.
Okay.
She's my least favorite.
So, David Crabtree asked me to watch a show for this time. I watched the first 3 episodes of this show. He gave me a request with donation.
Which I've always meant to watch.
Today I'm going to talk a little bit about West Wing, a show I also always meant to watch, and a weird thing to try to go back to in today's political climate, naturally, and, you know, like...
Are they all respectful and talk like adults?
Yes, that's the main thing, is just... It puts things into really strange perspective, where... all these things that seem really dramatic in that show feel almost trivial now, but you're comforted by the fact that all these people, while they're really worried about public relations and looking good and constantly questioning their own, like whether their own principles and morality are more important than the way they look, at least they're asking those questions, you know? And they're concerned about such things, and they have, like, souls and consciousnesses and ideologies, and the bar is such now, I don't mean to get political, but I can't help it. Ideologies politics is such now where I don't even care what your ideology is.
Just to have one.
I'm kind of just impressed that these people are principled. They could think just killing people because you stole their sandwich is okay, but at least they draw a line somewhere. Anyway, that is all I'm going to say about current politics and stuff. It's also strange to go back to after being in House of Cards.
Sure.
And obviously these are two things that people were constantly comparing when House of Cards first came out.
I have heard people say that House of Cards is like a less smart West Wing.
And it's funny because I always assumed it was a smarter West Wing, and that this show was kind of would feel kind of watered down in comparison, or to like softball or whatever. A lot of assumptions I had about this show that were completely shattered watching just the first episode, and especially after watching 3. The first 3 episodes are a really good, solid arc. And I'm glad that David asked me to watch those 3, and usually I just do the pilot and the next episode. But you really have to watch, I think, all 3 to really appreciate that arc. And I think if I just come in with the first 2, I'd be talking about kind of half of something, or not, a little bit more than half of something.
Mm-hmm.
But
2/3 of something.
I wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. That's how math works. But I wouldn't have. Well, I mean, story-wise, it feels more like half, but I guess I wouldn't have come in with the as good of an experience as I had with it, and one of the big assumptions I always made, just from what little I had seen of the show when it was on when I was younger, I think I saw an episode here or there. I want to say Michael J. Fox shows up in this show.
Really?
And that he is a regular or a semi-regular for a while. I remember that. I could look it up. I don't know how true that is, but I remembered that. But anyway, that is not one of the assumptions I was making that I was wrong about. No, the big assumption that I was made was that it was a political show that stayed away from politics. Where I thought that it was completely all-inclusive and it didn't want to, it was afraid to count anybody out, so it hardly even gave you a sense of whose politics anybody's was, and it's not like that at all. I mean, it's very much straight up, there's a Democrat in the White House, and these are Democrats we're watching, and it's funny because we talk so much about things that are still very much issues today, that in some ways it feels really alien because of what politics looks like right now, but in other ways, I feel very much at home. We're talking about a lot of the kinds of things the House of Cards was, just under a very different kind of lens, and under a lens of mostly people who are, if not always trying to do the right thing, conscious of the fact that they're going against their own moralities, versus a lot of people who, in House of Cards, some of which have are working through with their consciousnesses, and some who are just trying to be master manipulators. And so anyway, but there's a lot of talk about Christian conservatives and a lot of assumptions about the right and the far right, and some characters who are on the right but don't really embody that. We talk about a lot of the differences between right and left, both perceptions and assumptions versus just these people as people, and why they're in the parties they are, regardless of what it is they actually really believe in, that sort of thing. It's a real the best way I can describe what I've seen so far of West Wing is it's what I always wanted MASH to be. It's a sitcom with serious parts and no laugh track. It's not really a sitcom, but it's so witty, and a lot of it is driven very much by banter. It feels like you're watching a comedic stage play every week, and there's just so many jabs and insults and dry, witty humor thrown at people right and left through rooms. I imagine every script of this show is twice or three times as thick as the average TV script, and of course it's not a half-hour show; it's a regular, length drama. But
Aaron Sorkin's always been famous for the rapid fire dialogue, and
that's precisely.
And he writes what's the Facebook movie? He writes that.
Oh, does he write that?
Yeah, he writes that.
That makes me want to watch that more.
Have you also not seen that?
I haven't. Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was a thing you had seen. That.
Have you seen it? Oh, we should sit down and watch it this morning.
I should call it the Facebook movie. I don't remember what it's called.
We made ourselves watch this movie.
The Facebook movie.
I knew it until you said that. It's called
Social Network.
Social Network. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
But anyways, by the third episode, it was so dramatic and gripping, I had forgotten that it felt more like a comedy before that. And that made me really want to keep watching. I think of, and this is one of David's shows, so he'll be excited that I'm saying this. I think of all the TV that people have asked me to watch so far, this is the one that I'm most likely to finish, to just keep rolling with and get done with. In some ways, it also reminds me a lot of Star Trek from this period, because which is a weird thing to say, but it's because so much of it is about people with moral dilemmas that they're trying to figure out throughout a whole episode, and a lot of soul searching and a lot of introspection, and people just sitting down in a room hashing out impossible situations that they don't know how to solve, and some of it admittedly kind of goes on a little bit too long. There's some soap opera that I'm more interested in than others. And one criticism I'll lob at it is with just 3 episodes, I'm not totally sure what job everybody has. There's a character named Josh, who is one of the advisors or aides or something. He's important. I don't know what his job is. I'm sure it was stated very clearly at the beginning and I missed it. And just just getting started with the show, there's a couple characters that I keep conflating as the same character and realizing, no, those are different characters. But anyway, but Josh, in the first episode, has a one-night stand with, or not a one-night stand. He sleeps with a girl, and they hit it off, and they're probably gonna keep dating. And they accidentally switch pagers, which is a really easy device. Of course, this is 1999. Everybody didn't have cell phones yet. We were getting there, and they both have the exact same pager, which, like, I guess a lot of pagers would look the same.
Yeah, I would think all pagers would look very similar.
At the same time, if you're in Washington and everybody you work with has a pager, you'd think that you'd probably try to do something to distinguish it so it doesn't look the same as everybody else's pager. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Ding it up on purpose.
But some side fire.
Yeah, sure. Sign it. In silver pen. But anyway, so he sleeps with this girl and he gets a page. Later, and on his pager, realizes that he switched pagers with her, and calls the number on the pager, and it's an escort service, and he finds out, oh no, I accidentally slept with a prostitute. And but the problem is, he doesn't care, because he didn't sleep with a prostitute on purpose, he didn't pay her, and he likes her a lot, and he thinks he can save her. He thinks he can get her out of that life. The problem is, she loves what she does and doesn't have any problem with it, and has this great speech about how she wasn't abused, that nothing happened to her when she was younger. This is just a thing she likes to do, and
we're not getting paid for it.
Who are you to judge me and let me get paid? And it's really interesting. Like I was kind of sideswiped by that because I expected really softball, or I guess more softball. Network television,
especially for 99.
Yeah, and I felt like I was kind of watching a Netflix show, in a really good way. And of course, the production values are fantastic, and it's so well shot. It's got a lot of Joss Whedon-esque wonders, man. Like, they love their sets. They are very impressed with their White House, and so am I. But like, they like to go down halls for a couple of minutes before they cut. That's their favorite thing. And anyway, so throughout, I don't even think they've really resolved it. Like, we're at the end of the third episode, and he's still like making excuses to everybody that he's either told or has found out about this, about why he thinks it's fine, and it's obvious that he's kind of like rehearsed it, sort of like sort of in front of a mirror and like proing and conning it, and like, no, I'm gonna do what I want to, and a lot of it is principles versus public relations. That's the best way I could describe that show, which is what you would expect, but it's really well handled, and but like I said, like he's interesting. I like him. I would have kind of expected that to maybe be resolved by now, but then at the same time, if he keeps in a relationship with her, maybe that should continue on. I just don't want it to go forever. You know what I mean? I'm kind of ready to do something else with that character because I've been around the block a few times. I know this is like the thing we're doing with this guy at the beginning of the season. I know I'm going to get into season 5 and completely forget that was ever a thing. You know what I mean? So like there are certain things like that at the beginning of a show where you feel like you're watching like the first couple episodes of a show.
Or they'll stay in a steady relationship. She'll stop being a prostitute, and you won't remember that she used to be.
That's something like that too. I don't know. Martin Sheen is Bossa Nova.
You see the president?
And, yeah.
Oh,
and
wow.
I mean, I've always loved him, and this is one of the things he's most known for now. But he's killer in this, and the stuff he grapples with is really interesting. And they walk a really good line of having him be principled but really flawed, and again, obviously having to play the PR game, but like not being so naive that you can't buy that he got elected or that he's an incompetent president, but he asks questions that a lot of presidents wouldn't ask, which is what makes him interesting. And so he starts out, and by the way, the show starts like shortly after he's been elected. So we're seeing, in the first 3 episodes, we get to see him deal with the first military strike that he's ever had to deal with, and there's an attack from Syria, and before that happens, he has this whole conversation with I can't remember if he's a military guy or I think I think he's this black guy that works in the White House that's has some military posting. I forget what it is. And anyway, long story short, he has a conversation about how he's worried about, and he's not whiny about it or anything, but I mean, like, obviously he's a really confident guy. He's really down to earth, and he's got a little bit of a southern. He's not really southern, but he's got kind of that attitude, right? And anyway, he's talking to this guy about how difficult he's afraid it's going to be being the commander in chief part, because when bad things happen, when you get attacked, you have to respond, and he doesn't. He can't muster any hatred for any foreign country. He's like, it's just too big. It's almost like it's too big. He can't wrap his mind around it. He's like, I just don't naturally already have any anger toward any of these people. It's like, it's the personal thing versus the job, right? Well, spoilers, but then that guy is in the plane. I think it's a plane. They get shot down by the Syrians, and now it's personal. So the guy he has that conversation with, oh no, he's a doctor. That's what he's like, a military doctor. That's what it is. He gives him his checkup. If I'm remembering, if I'm remembering this right, that is the guy who dies in the plane. And now it's personal. And now he switches gears completely and wants to, like, attack them with everything. You know, like, that's what he wants to do. And I think in the back of his mind he knows he's not going to, but he gets really ticked off when he goes into the room with the Joint Chiefs or whatever, and the military advisors, and they give him the standard like attack them on the same level plan, and he's like he doesn't understand, or he doesn't like the idea of the measured response, because he's like, well, if we just because it feels routine, and like nobody's thinking about the actual lives that are lost. And he talks about, he has this great speech later where he talks about Rome, and he's like, a Roman citizen could walk anywhere in the world and nobody would mess with him, because he knows that because they know that if they do, you have one superpower, and Rome will come down on you with the fury of 1,000 suns. And he wishes America could be like that. And then there's, I think it's Toby who gives him, or who I forget, who gives him the counter speech about how, well, like, once we, like, you can do that, but then we're not America, and you're basically a dictator at that point. And like, I don't know, it was surprisingly powerful stuff. Like, especially from a thing that felt like a sitcom, at the beginning. Yeah, but anyway, it's wonderful.
Does it surprise you that Aaron Sorkin is one of Bendis' favorite writers?
Not even a little bit. Yeah, except that Sorkin, or at least from what I've watched of him so far, he's able to have a couple characters have a really lengthy conversation, but constantly keep it driving and going someplace, because Bendis will get really meandering, and he'll get kind of in love with the sound of his own voice. I don't get that as much with Sorkin, and also I think that again, so far he seems a little bit better at giving characters different voices. Not that Bendis is always bad at that, but just with what little I've lived with Sorkin, I think that's probably the superior writer as far as dialogue.
Well, I think
goes.
Bendis would agree with you.
But I mean, like, nothing against Bendis, because obviously I love Bendis, but I do think, especially more lately, he's kind of gotten a little bit in love with the sound of his own voice. But this is a '99, so I don't know what Sorkin's like now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it stays like this. I'm kind of in for a treat. 6 seasons or however long it is.
Well, he leaves at some point, and apparently the season that he leaves, it's like, and war starts, and like this goes wrong, and this goes wrong.
It goes crazy. They start messing with status quo all over the place. That I remember, because I remember tuning in at some point when, spoiler alert for this show, but, and by the way, this show is on Netflix right now, so you can go watch all of it. But all I remember is at some point something happens to the president, and there is temporarily John Goodman takes over. John Goodman is president for some period.
But yeah,
I remember that.
one of the few things I know about that show is at some point Sorkin leaves, and his last season, he's like, the president's kidnapped, and war's declared, and like, this goes wrong, have fun next season.
And I'll say this too, I think it might be really difficult. Yeah, he's definitely in West Wing. I think it would be really difficult to go back to 24 after watching the show.
Really?
Yeah, because it would be weird to go watch a show that's like that violent and that heavy, but pulls its punches about the politics, and where I don't even know what party the president is of. It's weird. There's also this really interesting, like, they're not scared of tackling any topic in that show. There's a really interesting conversation about race they have in that third episode, where there's a black kid that comes in, and he's just graduated high school, and he can't go to college because his mother just died, and there's a horrible tragedy, right? But he got like incredibly good grades, and he's in like the top percentile of his class, right? And he comes in for a messenger job, but somebody, I don't remember characters' names right now, there's a guy whose job it is to hire people for positions, that wants to give him the president's aide position, the guy that would like getting coffee and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they get a lot of comedy mileage out of it, and then it gets really, really wonderfully dramatic. Where at first the joke is this kid thinks he came in for messenger position, and he keeps being told that he's being considered for this position for the aide, and the kid just assumes it's all a mistake, and he never thinks that what they're talking about is actually real and happening, and he's just so confused. And he plays it brilliantly. It's really funny. And then there's a scene where he gets taken into the Oval Office, and the president's just like freaking out, losing his mind. He's angry about Syria, and he's taking out on everybody. And he's lost his glasses, and he can't read a speech, and he's mad because he can't find his glasses. And there's a woman that always goes and gets his glasses when he loses them, and she can't find him, and he's like blaming it on her. And then he says a thing that makes this kid realize where they are, because he mentions that he was in his private study. And so the kid is like, so the guy that's trying to hire him is like, Mr. President, talk to this kid, and then the president's like, who the hell's this kid? And he's like, well, sir, you said that you were in your private study. That's probably where your glasses are. And he's like, who the heck are you? And then he goes and gets his glasses. And later he's calmed down, and he's stopped losing his mind, and he's figured out the Syria thing. And he ends up bringing this kid in, but there is a whole conversation before he's hired. And the speech he gives the kid about your mother died. I think she was in the police force or something, and it happened from such and such a weapon, and we're trying to get those off the streets. And would you come help us make that happen? It's a really tear-jerky kind of speech. But before he gets brought on, there's this whole conversation about whether or not it's okay, or would, again, PR, it would look bad to have this black kid waiting on the president. Is that going to come off as racist or something? And there's this, and then there's this black general who has a conversation with the guy who's hiring this kid, who's like, well, because he says, okay, do you have any problem with a young black man waiting on the president? And he says, well, I'm an old black man, and I wait on the president. And he talks about how it's an honor. And then he says, and I don't know, this got me, I loved this, where he goes, well, is he going to get paid a decent wage? And the guy says yes. And he's like, is he going to be treated with respect? Yes. He says, well, then what the hell do I care? And I don't know, that was great.
That's interesting.
But yeah, they're not scared of anything in that show, and it is not the show I thought it was.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's great. I highly recommend the beginning of that show. It's fantastic. So anyway, really appreciate David having me talk about that, and if I can find the time to watch some of it, I might come back and then discuss it again down the road of my own volition. The other thing that I need to talk about briefly, sorry if I went on that on that for too long, but
That's a Red
I had things
Panda.
to talk about. Yeah. Do you know anything
Red
about
Panda.
Do you know anything about Red
Oh,
Panda?
yeah.
Well, cool. You can talk about this more than I can. Then.
I have listened to the first 4 or 5 seasons.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
There's a point where he gets married to his sidekick, and that's kind of the last part. I keep meaning to go back, and I just haven't. No, the Red Panda's wonderful.
Yeah, it's still going on. It's like 13 seasons. Okay, so you can help me talk about this thing because
Sure.
I only listened to one episode. I didn't have time to do any more than that. It was the first episode.
Okay. It's not great.
I didn't get a lot
grows.
from it. It felt really derivative to me, and like it's really well produced and it's really well acted. But man, I'm glad you know something about that show, and you can tell me if my suspicions were correct, which is it seemed like there were a lot of things that they could build on where it would find its own footing and find some ground. We should talk about what it is first.
Okay.
So this is a thing that was suggested to me by I don't have that person's name right here. Let me find. Sorry, let me look at my other notes. Everybody, give me just a second here. This was suggested by Daniel Gibson, so thanks for that request. This is a Canadian show that is about a Canadian superhero that is based very much on the Shadow and I guess some other
Green Hornet
radio
as well.
show heroes. And and he is a detective who is very much not a cop and is a and you know is very much a superhero type and but doesn't have superpowers. I don't think he has superpowers.
He does not have superpowers.
And he has a sidekick named the Flying Squirrel who doesn't fly. I don't think. I'm pretty sure she doesn't fly.
I think she gets like wings.
Oh, does she?
I think so.
Okay.
Did like the Spider-Man web wings.
Oh, okay.
Like glide.
Or like Arthur or something.
Well, and that's how flying squirrels fly.
Of course, they glide. Yeah. So anyway, but this is a thing that started back in 2005, and as far as I can tell, is just an independent radio play.
And they do some other shows too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they have a crime one.
I saw
called,
one that was a crime
Black Diamond or something.
Yeah, but I didn't know if that was related to this.
Yes, same
I don't know if it was the same universe though.
No.
No,
I don't think so. It's same production company, same like writer, same. I think the main character is because the writer and director is also the Red Panda.
Oh, okay.
And I think he is for the other show as well.
It's all on a website where you can listen to it for free called DakotaRingTheater.com, and you can listen to them streaming or download them.
It's also on iTunes.
Which is nice. Oh, is it?
Yeah, the only problem with iTunes is it doesn't break it up by season. So it's
okay.
It's just all of it.
But yeah, because on the website it's broken up by season.
Yeah,
and I don't know if every season is the same length. The first season's 10 episodes, and they're short. They're 27 minutes, or at least the first episode's like 27 minutes long.
They stay about that length.
Stay that short.
I think they stay 10 episode season. Maybe they get a little bit longer or shorter. I don't remember. It's been a while since I looked into this. There's also novels. You can buy them on Amazon. There are novels and comic books.
I noticed that, they had comic books, and
I've always meant to buy the comics.
It looked like they tried a couple of videos. I don't know what they did with those. But anyway, it's really authentic to, detective radio fiction from that period. Sometimes almost too much so for me, at least that first episode, where it was like, okay, but like I could just go listen to that stuff. It was difficult to get excited about continuing on, except for some of the story stuff that I thought they could build on, and then I was thinking, okay, like I said, like there might be a lot more here, and it just feels really derivative because that's the starting place. The vernacular is spot on.
Yeah. No, and it's all, it feels like really authentic in just the way everyone talks, and even the sensibilities, which are a little bit more modern, but not so much.
Do they get more modern? Because you know what, even right away, that's true a little bit. It was kind of, I mean, obviously it's kind of unusual that you have a sidekick that you have a female sidekick that, like, really wants to get with the hero. That's not really a thing we were doing back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess Margot Lane a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah. So maybe
it's
that
more
is kind
overt in this than we would have actually done in the, like Margot and Lamont in The Shadow are very like a couple.
Mm-hmm.
We're like we never talk about kissing. We never, like, there's no actual discussion of romance. They're just always together. It's like Fred and Daphne. Whereas this, they will eventually get married.
Yeah.
Their relationship will progress.
But I don't know if this changes over time, but it seems to at least be it's tongue-in-cheek about it, but it kind of has, like, the same sensibilities and attitudes toward women that a lot of those shows did at that time.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that evolves.
Yeah, it does, especially as they get closer and stuff like that. It at least comments on it in a way that it wouldn't have back then.
Sure, yeah. But it feels very much like the goal of it is to try to duplicate one of those so much so that the only thing that would that would kind of be a tip-off that it didn't really come from that time period is just that we say .com at the end, and it's really impressive. Like it gets really, really close.
So here's what they do as they move forward. That in certain ways,
no, please enlighten me. I listened to a pilot.
In certain ways, improves upon all of that stuff. So first of all, it's got historical perspective. So World War II is looming. And the characters don't know it, but the show does. And so we start seeding World War II.
Oh, that's really cool.
And there's visions of things that are going to come, and we, the audience, know it's World War II, but the characters do not. And then World War II happens.
And whoever gets Canada's perspective of that.
Yeah. And then World War II happens. And the show starts existing within World War II.
That's really cool.
And it's all clearly very planned out and seeded. As you go on, the entire universe kind of opens up. There's a group of superheroes that you'll meet at some point that he wants no part of, like a Justice League type team.
Sure, yeah.
It's a lot of the villains like he's met before, so like there's history, and like sometimes they'll go back and they'll tell stories they haven't told.
They treat it like you're being thrown into a show that's been on a long time.
Yeah.
They say another adventure in the first episode.
Yeah, and the novels and the comics like fit between episodes, and so like sometimes you'll meet a character, but he already knows them and things like that. There's a villain called the Poet, and he's great. He speaks entirely in poetry, and there's an episode they do that's entirely in. There's a Christmas episode they do that's entirely in limerick, and
that's great.
He rhymes two things that shouldn't rhyme. And then, like 3 episodes later, the poet shows up and yells at him for rhyming these 2 words that don't rhyme.
That's really funny. It's like a bad slant rhyme.
Yeah. It's it's been a couple of years, and I've always meant to go back and keep going, and I haven't. But I listened to at least Operation Cold Feet, which is the last which is the episode that was.
I'll check more of it out if you say it's that great.
And it's something I think Jason would like. It's real kid appropriate as well.
And I was gonna ask you about that too, because it seemed like it first episode.
As far as I can recall, they never start swearing. It doesn't get particularly violent. And it goes into some of the pulpy places that like some of those radio shows wouldn't have gone. Like sometimes there's like an army of robots and things like that, and it's all really well done.
Does he have like an arch nemesis? Or they're just like several nemeses?
I can't remember. I want to say
the first episode is like a Sphinx guy.
I want to say there's a big one, or I want to say there's like a couple of big ones. Like these are the big villains, but I can't remember off the top of my head like what they're called. But I want to say there is a couple like arch nemesis characters.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, like it's like I said, the production value is really good. The website is really nice and easy to navigate. It looks like a really underground thing. Like I wonder how it. How they got off the ground and got so many people to find out about it. Because I'm surprised you even know about this. I had never heard of this.
Yeah. I find it really weirdly through an Amazon review of something that's like a throwback pulp novel, and someone was like, they do all this wrong, and this guy does it right. And I'm like, well, who's that guy? And I go and look him up, and I'm like, okay, so he does these weird things called Red Panda. Let me go look that up. And then I just like, oh, it's a web series. But there's also novels and comics. Like, he's big enough. I want to say that the comics were published by like Dark Horse.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like no, this is like a weird thing where like it
took off somehow.
Yeah, it has like this big popularity, but I've never met anyone that knows what it is.
Yeah.
Like
this was the first I'd heard of it.
The way they produce it, it seems like they must be making money. Like this must be their job.
Yeah.
But I've also never met anyone that knows it. So.
Or at least it's a hobby that they're just really dedicated to.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. So one thing I wondered listening to it because a big thing that they take from the Shadow is he's got that laugh, and I wondered like how morally ambiguous he gets.
It's interesting because when we meet the other superheroes, he feels more. They think he's more morally ambiguous than he is. He's not a killer. Like, he's got that Batman thing, like, he doesn't kill. But, like,
But he'll cross, like, some law lines.
As I recall, it's that thing where, like, the superheroes all view him as a vigilante. Yeah. And I don't know what separates him from them, other than just, like, he doesn't like them, because they have, like, rules and bylaws. He won't abide by those. But it only ever really seems to come up when he's dealing with those other superheroes.
Well, and are the superheroes, like, duly deputized agents of the law?
Probably.
Because there's a sense of that already in the first episode, that, like, the cops don't trust him.
Yeah.
And they're, like, public opinion is against him.
Yeah, he's very much also Green Hornet, as he is, because the Green Hornet
that he doesn't
not kill and things like that.
Intentionally pretend like he's causing crimes.
Yeah. No, Not having gone back to this.
Having no idea you were even going to be talking about it.
I really like the Red Panda.
I'm so glad you had heard of this, because I listened to 27 minutes of a thing and didn't have a lot to say yet.
It's a thing that I think you could listen to more, especially while you're driving around and stuff, and I think the kids would really like it. It's real just fun, adventure, but there is a continuity going through it.
It seemed like a thing that could get really involved.
Yeah, it gets really big.
The plot in the first episode is pretty generic.
Yeah, and it just kind of keeps...
Which is why I've not said a lot about that.
And it does the arc and the...
There's a riddle of a sphinx. They have to solve it. There's a villain. He's trying to steal things.
And there's an arc. It's the classic TV show thing where, like, some episodes are kind of arcing and tied into this overarching story that he's telling, and then we never lose and he's fighting a supervillain.
Yeah.
For this episode kind of a thing. So yeah, not knowing that I was going to talk about this, I really like the Red Panda, and I've listened to quite a bit of it.
Thanks, buddy. You saved my bacon on that. I appreciate it. Well, everybody, thanks always for watching Primetime Crisis, and thank you guys both for your picks this time. If you would like to suggest something for us to review, either me or Eric or both, on Primetime Crisis or any other show, we will watch something, we will read something, we will play something, we'll sample something, we'll watch an entire movie, we'll sample a television show if you want us to do that, and that's just a $20 donation on Patreon. What?
We'll watch an entire TV show. We will only sample a film. We will watch the first 20 minutes, and that is all you get.
That's it, man. If we are grossed out, like when we were trying to watch...
There's a gross toilet, I'm out.
Well, I'm done, yeah. And we'll still talk about it. Well, we made it to the toilet. Here's what we thought about that. When he goes in the toilet, I'm not real sure what's going on. $20 a month if you want to do that regularly. You can go on patreon.com/Geekvolution. You can pledge for just 1 month, or go to the email address in the description of the first video in the playlist, the intro video, and I'll try to put it here too, but that will allow you to send me a message, and you can do that just one time if you want to do it that way outside of Patreon. Some people don't like to use Patreon, so I want to keep that option open. Anyway, thanks again for watching, folks. We're going to move on now in the Omnibus. If you are watching the playlist, you can just keep the feed running, and we'll get into He Made Me Watch. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Men in Black 3, so look forward to that. Keep on watching with us, and we'll see you again after this break.